And I used to be a pantser. I used to, just let my imagination flow. I knew where to start, where to end, and somewhere in the middle that needed to shift it. But as I've gotten better, like gotten deeper into my series, there's events that I need to put in there. I still leave open spots for my imagination to run wild, but I do tend to plan it out a little bit more. In each story, that until I get to that plotting stage, I know the big events that need to happen in those stories, and then the rest can be fillers. And then I find connections that I don't even know. I was like, oh wow, I've set that up in book 6, and that was in book 1, and I'm like, I didn't even think about that. Because I'm in depth, like such so deep into my story. It's all in my head.
I wonder about that too because you might think about doing something several books later, and then I wonder, okay, how do you account for that missing gap at that previous time? And I suppose you would just write it into the current book, but it's nice when you actually have a link already.
Yeah, and I haven't come into it where I'm missing gaps. I mean, there's new information that he learns because he's learning about this entire world that's coexisted for, alongside of us and kind of evolved. They've been existing as far back as humans have been alive. But there's a lot of things that he doesn't understand, so he's learning, and then I'm always able to connect it to something, so that there's that connection that fits. I don't know whether that's subconscious or if I'm, planting it on purpose. Sometimes I am, but a lot of times I'm just like, oh, that fits neatly into this section here, and it's just accidental inspiration.
I like that. And really, I guess that makes sense because as we live our lives, we don't know everything that happened before.
Yeah,
We're not aware of conversations that happened without us or this or that that somehow connects with our lives. We don't know it
yeah,
until we do know it. So I suppose from a book writing standpoint, that makes sense too.
yes.
It's an interesting thing to think about.
The hardest part for me when with my books is, so we have the common magic, I had to develop this like dark magic theory. And I kind of had this concept in my head as I was writing it through. It started in book 1. We saw hints of it in book 2. It became in, it wasn't until book 4 when I actually sat down and I had a character explain what dark magic actually was. And but I realized that I had planted the seeds all along, and I knew this. I just hadn't written it down.
Now, you and I, when we first spoke, talked a lot about kind of how your life and elements of your life kind of were inspiration for this, and how much you learned about yourself by certain things that were revealed about, I think, one of your children or both of your children
Both,
being
yeah.
diagnosed with autism. Um,
Yep.
so how much of that plays into the books that you write, or how much of that is inspiration for what you write?
Um, I, I, it was pointed out to me that because I also have autism and ADHD, and I was diagnosed after my sons were diagnosed. But I had a reader point out to me when I was explaining how, my character's trying to find a sense of belonging, but they're too human for here, too magic for here. So where do they belong? They need to figure it out. They need to master their abilities. They need to survive. And somebody said, well, that's kind of like your journey through life with autism, trying to figure out where you fit into everything and just sort of survive the chaos of society.